Welcome back to the Theology of the Buddy, a podcast for Catholics who love the beauty of the Church's sacred tradition. This is episode 86. My name is Chris, and I'm joined today by my beautiful wife and co-host, Julie. Before we begin, if you haven't yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening and leave us a 5-star review. It really helps us out. Also, don't forget to drop by theologyofthebuddy.com for all of our show notes and past episodes. While you're at it, make sure you follow us on social media so you can keep up to date with all of the great content we are setting out. You can find out about how to connect with us. Again, that's over at theologyofthebuddy.com. All right, so on today's episode, we're continuing our conversation between Julie and I with regards to meeting God in the NICU, where we're talking about our experience as parents walking with our child, Therese, through NICU and beyond. And it's quite a wild story. So we'll just get right back into it. So we're going to continue on listening into the conversation between Julie and I about meeting God in the NICU.
Yeah. You know, like all through the whole process, anytime something big would happen, you know, cardiac stuff, you know, this, that, or the other thing, infant Jesus would always show up.
Yeah.
He would always show up. It'd be like, okay, and I walk into Sunday Mass and his statue's there, and I'm like, oh no. I mean,
like a statue which was not there
normally. You know, it'd be like, okay, okay, infant Jesus, I know you got something happening. What's it going to be?
Yeah.
What's it going to be? Yeah, it was the same. He would just always be showing up. So I guess at this point we can skip to the February, right?
So yeah. So I mean,
he showed up before like in February, millions of appointments. We end up needing to take Therese to Sick Kids for her heart defects.
Yes.
She needed some imaging done there.
Sick Kids is in Toronto.
Yeah, Sick Kids is in Toronto.
Which is like 2.5 hours from where we are.
So basically she has some holes between, like in her heart, but she also has a pulmonary vein stenosis. So she has veins that converge, like that come from her lungs back into her heart. But then they also narrow as they go in. So that's where she can get a lot of the complications from. And we don't know if she needs intervention yet, but it's being monitored. And so her cardiologist wanted this done at Sick Kids. So, I mean, this week in February, we had like a gastroenterology appointment for her. And then we were in Sick Kids. That was the Wednesday. We got this imaging done. Well, she had an echocardiogram there. And then that was like the previous Friday. And then the Wednesday she had a CT scan. And I think it was like the Tuesday she started having some more she'd had it in NICU before, like throwing up some like coffee grounds. And anytime you see that, it's like, okay, well, is it going to go away or is it going to stay?
Because she's literally eating coffee grounds now. For those who don't know,
it doesn't look like coffee grounds though.
Okay. What we're talking about here is the fact that Therese started throwing up old blood.
Yeah.
And so it was certainly concerning. We had seen it in NICU, but, you know, it had kind of gone away on its own after, you know, they kind of gave her some rest. But yeah, it showed up and it kept showing up.
Yeah, it didn't resolve.
So I was like,
we got to take her.
Babe, I got to take her to NICU or to the hospital.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it was wild because like the week before I had gone to receive communion. Don't tell anybody. And as I went up to receive our Lord, like I got right to the front. And Therese just hurls all over me. And I'm like, I'm devastated, you know? And I'm just hoping like nobody's looking at me. But so like we just kind of gone through that, but yeah. And then that following week she started throwing up blood and
Her weight was also like her weight had stalled out too.
Oh, big
and was
time.
like struggling to like she was just struggling to keep it on the weight. Just period.
Yeah.
She was around 7.5, 8 pounds, and
Yeah.
when she came home from NICU, she was like 6 pounds,
Yeah. So like,
just about 7. So she
really-
dropped and then she gained a bit, but she
Yeah.
wasn't breaking 8 pounds at all.
Yeah. And so I think it was like that Tuesday, maybe I had opened up my guitar case.
Yeah.
And a guitar case I hadn't opened in a long time. Like I've had multiple guitars here, and I opened up the guitar case, and there was in the pick holder area of the guitar case, there was a holy card sitting there with, and again, I hadn't seen this in a long time. And it was a holy card of Saint Teresa of Jesus, or of Avila, and the child Jesus. And I brought it up because I was like, oh my gosh, look at this holy card. And I was just kind of excited. I was like, this is such a sweet holy card. Like, I think I had gotten this when I was on net, like 15 years ago, and I was like, oh, this is so cool, and it, it has the conversation of like our Lord and Saint Teresa, where she sees the child Jesus, and he says, who are you? And she says, I am Teresa of Jesus. And she says, who are you? And he says, I'm Jesus of Teresa. And I was like, oh, that's funny. Oh, that's, it's kind of like Therese too, Therese of the child Jesus. Cool. And I bring it up and I show it to Julie in the kitchen, and she just kind of gets this look of horror on her face. I'm like, what?
You remember that?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I look at you and I'm like,
I think I remember this conversation.
You don't remember it? It was like,
I kind of do. There's just been so many times of it. Like I remember seeing him out randomly at
Holy Angels.
Well, Holy Angels, Mike and Brooks, but also in the chapel at
St. Joseph's Hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was just before she was transferred
to St. Thomas.
To St. Thomas.
Yeah. Yeah. And then
then one of us around cardiology too, and I think we're around anyway. Just yeah. And he showed up.
Yeah, and I show her this holy card, and Julie just gets this look of horror, like, oh gosh, what's going to happen now? And then 2 days later,
that's usually what it is. 2 or 3 days before.
Yeah.
Whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
that happens.
Yeah. So it was clear that like the child Jesus has like clearly chosen our little Therese.
Yeah.
He has this special relationship with her. I don't know what it is. She looks at him like at his statue, and sometimes it almost looks like she's lovingly looking at him. I don't know if you've ever noticed that.
I have. Yeah.
But yeah, so they admit her, and I'll be honest with you. It was, the doctor comes in after I've kind of like gone over things with the nurse and the resident, and like I'm showing them, the blood stained blankets and things. And, they're seeing that her weight stalled. They're seeing her even throw up there, in the emergency room in London. And the doctor was so kind. She just looks at me and she goes, you guys have been through enough. And like, that was so validating.
Yeah.
Because it felt like I'd finally been seen.
Yeah.
Nobody, we had felt so alone. I mean, our friends and our family had given us kind of their well wishes and had, done certain charitable acts throughout. But this was, essentially what we needed at that moment, because we were so tired.
Yeah. It's like behind closed door, like it's just so isolating and exhausting. And when it's been, August, September, October, November, December, January, now into February, and it's like still no answers. She's still throwing up, still facing the same problems, months of
The same old.
The same old, and yeah.
And no answers.
And no answers,
nothing.
and nothing to fix it. And
you just don't
and you would
see
any
any way out.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, like, she would take a bottle and she would throw up, and you would just, like, I'd just feel so defeated and so upset, like trying to think of what else we could tweak or do different, or just like anything that could work. And I mean, I would just see just the look of, like, she was tired. Like, she was just so, gosh, I don't know what the word.
Battle weary.
She was, like, she looked defeated.
Yeah.
Like, you would just see her, like, a sigh, like just.
And she wasn't like that in the beginning.
No.
She wasn't like that at all.
Yeah.
And even in October, when she came home, when we started getting her to bottle, there was this level of, like, when we eventually were able to get her to bottle in November.
Yeah.
And we pulled the tube out, which, by the way, that was a wild story in itself. There was, like, she developed this wicked cough, and we thought maybe the tube had shifted.
It's sitting over her.
What's going on? It was terrifying. It sounded really bad. And so I made the executive decision. I'm pulling the tube. This is coming out. We are going to bottle.
Yeah.
And I remember we pulled that tube.
Let her be hungry and let her bottle.
And we pulled the tube from her, out of her nose and out of her tummy. And it came out bent, for the record.
In the shape of a
U. Which
like kind of like a.
Anyway.
It curved up at the bottom.
It curved up, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, we pulled it, and that was the first time that day we pulled it that she smiled at us.
Yeah.
She was so happy to have that dang tube out. But yeah, so you could tell, like, she was invigorated. She had kind of found new hope, new vigor. And yet, yeah, February, we get there, and she's so tired.
Oh yeah.
And we're so tired.
And the doctor said what she said to you.
And so they brought her in.
Yeah.
And admitted her again. Here we are in the hospital again, restarting this process.
Felt like we never left.
Yeah. We got back into the flow.
Yep.
And again, I'm at this point, like, I had just started a new job in January. I thought, well, like, I started looking for a job because in November, early December, I was fired because of the vaccine mandate.
Yeah. No jab, no job.
No jab, no job. Shout out to Belinda Clara Holios and her husband, Jim, for being one of the very few who fought for people like us.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're listening to this or will ever hear this, but thank you. We love you. Because, you gave people like me hope in the midst of that.
Me too.
But yeah. Fast forward. So I've just started this new job, and I have to go to them, and I have to be like, guys, our daughter's gone back to NICU, or gone back to the hospital.
Yeah.
And they were so understanding and so kind. So praise God, and God bless them for their kindness. And it was kind of around this time too that other people from our community really started to come out of the woodwork, and really show up and help.
Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah. It was like as if people suddenly got a whiff of, like, what was happening to us.
Yeah.
We received, like, mass card after mass card.
Yeah.
And, people, making food and offering to watch John.
Yeah.
Which was, offering to watch John was, I think, the biggest help. I don't think people really understood that, but it was just so necessary because we had nobody. And like donations of, like, gifts, like, we were lavished with gifts from, a number of people. But yeah, in particular, I don't want to, like, exclude anybody, but, like, Jen, your cousin, and
her family,
just like unreal
So my aunts and
generosity.
uncles and friends.
Yeah. And my mom, who was at the time as well in the hospital.
Yeah.
Still is. Please pray for my mom. Yeah, it was just a wild ride.
Yeah.
So that Thursday she was admitted.
Yeah.
After, previously, going to Sick Kids in Toronto. And, they were just kind of like monitoring her, trying to figure out what was
bowel
going
rest
on.
and some better GERD meds.
Trying, to see what they could do, but it really wasn't making a huge difference.
Yeah. I mean, it started out okay. And then, we were kind of starting to get back into the same thing. It was the Tuesday then that I was there. And I had John with me because they had some exceptions that, like, if you didn't have childcare, and we'd have it sometimes, but that particular day anyway, he was with me through the day. And, I step out, he's in the stroller, and I step out into the hall for rounds with the doctors, and they're like, so, I'm like, got my list of questions of like what the plan is or what my thoughts were, that kind of thing. And they say to me, so we got some new information. Like, okay. Like, what new information are you talking about? So we got the results from her CT scan from Sick Kids. And I'm like, okay, like, thinking like, you're not cardiology. What relevance does this have? They say to me, she actually has like a really large hiatal hernia. I was just so excited. I was so excited because...
Can you describe what a hiatal hernia is?
Okay, so they described it to me, and that we ended up getting her on the surgical team. She had a pretty significant surgery, but the surgeon had described exactly how it looked. So basically, your diaphragm is a muscle that keeps like your stomach below, your lungs are above, so your esophagus goes down into your stomach. Anyway, so the hole that goes through was way bigger than it should have been. Like, it should be nice and tight right around the esophagus. It was not. Muscles were very loose and flabby, but a sixth of her stomach had come up through that hole and were pushing against, like, kind of on the side that her heart was on.
And her lungs.
And her lungs.
So a sixth of her stomach had herniated into her chest cavity.
Yeah.
And so looping back on that
explains
tube,
a lot. The J-shaped tube we pulled out.
We kind of wonder if, based on that tube could have been
in the upper part.
In the upper part.
Of the stomach.
So...
And even the times that we, like, why couldn't we, like, an NG is not typically that difficult to insert, but I mean, we would only be able to get it so far, and it was like it was getting stuck.
Yeah.
And we just could, like, why is this getting stuck?
Yeah.
Well, that would be why. It was wild. I mean, when I'm thinking, like, with these people, I'm like, they're probably thinking, like, wow, she's crazy. How is she excited for this kind of news? Like, but when you have dealt for 7 months with a girl who has thrown up
every day,
multiple times, and is struggling to grow and can't keep anything in, and, like, no answer. It's just GERD. It's, to get that kind of news is, like, earth-shattering, amazing. We have an answer. We have something that we can fix. Like, I was, like, ready to just start dancing in the hall. Like, I was just so elated finally having an answer. Like, man.
Yeah. And it's wild. The only reason why they knew about it was because she had this chest scan, or body scan.
Yeah, the CT scan.
In Toronto.
All these things that, like, it's like I could just see kind of going back. I mean, like, if she didn't have the heart issues, if all these things in NICU didn't happen, I mean, we would have had no clue. I mean, maybe potentially like she'd had for a couple months later a scope booked. So, I mean, we eventually probably would have found it. But yeah, I mean, just kind of like going back, could really see how God had like really weaved that together. And like, I mean, God bless her cardiologist. Her cardiologist has like pushed for so much for her to get done that has ended up being exactly what we've needed.
Yeah.
And just random things like, yeah. So there was that. So, cue the surgical booking and,
because they had to,
it was a 4-hour surgery. I mean, she was there a few weeks. They were trying to get her nutritional status better. We had some like family friends watch John through, kind of the surgery days and a few days after, we are so grateful. Like so grateful. But yeah, I mean it was a Thursday. It was 3rd of March. She had her surgery. I mean, they, God really took care of things. She was able to have it done laparoscopically. So they didn't have to do a big incision. The surgeon does it like robotically, basically. Just some tools in her abdomen, and she handled it really, really well. But it was long. It was really long. Like we took her down about 8:15, and the surgeon around 11:30, they had called up saying there was about an hour left. And then 12:30, around 1:30, then they had called and said that,
yeah,
we could come down in about an hour from there.
Yeah. It was like,
oh man,
but they also put in a G tube, which is a tube that goes directly into the stomach, and has like a cap that you basically you connect to via feeding tube or whatnot.
So they had like a dual purpose for that.
Yeah.
Try to prevent the hernia from recurring again. And I mean, basically post surgery, they never bottle right away after. It said like at least a few weeks, typically a few months. And I mean, she had some like she'd never had a good feeding experience, like at all. And I mean, until that, it would have been an NG tube. And quite frankly, at this point, she still would have had an NG tube, but it worked out just better in her favor to do the G tube. And,
so the surgery was successful. That was February.
Yeah.
End of February.
Yeah, March. And she was home about a week after that.
But while all of this is happening, we also get news back from genetics.
Yeah. So we had done blood work kind of like to see why isn't she growing? Like, besides, okay, well, she's throwing up, but I mean, she's still doing the other stuff she needs to do, wetting diapers and soiling them like she should. And her cardiologist was like, well, we had gotten results that they weren't completely normal. We didn't know what that meant. And the cardiologist was like, oh, well, you're here. Thank God cardiology coming to the rescue again.
Cardiology and the surgical team.
And the surgical team.
Really went to bat for us because the wait time in Canada, #Canadian healthcare.
2 years.
2 years for you to meet with someone from genetics. They pushed us through and we were able to meet with them while in hospital.
Yeah, this was like the day before, 2 days before we left.
Yeah. And what did they tell you?
So they told us that Therese had a genetic deletion. So out of the chromosomes that you have, it was number 13. And if you ever see a picture of a chromosome, there's like a shorter part at the top and a longer part at the bottom. Maybe like the P arm is the top, the Q arm is the bottom. So it's the Q arm. And it's kind of like each portion of it is numbered. So the very bottom part is 34. So she has a 13q34 deletion on one chromosome.
So if you're not a nerd, that just basically means that she has a genetic condition called CHAMP1.
Yeah. So CHAMP1 is one of the genes in that portion. That's just deleted. It's just not there.
It's not there. And
it causes a whole lot of things.
One of them being deformities.
Yep, like heart defects. Well, the same like midline defects. So I mean, she got she had tongue tie that was taken care of, and the lip tie, but the heart defects, the hernia, the growing problems, the feeding problems, like the whole she can't suck, swallow, breathe, like she couldn't coordinate that. It explains that. There's usually like concerns about like speech delays and motor delays. So typically the common feature is an intellectual disability, but I mean, she definitely has some motor delay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
but he gave us a lot of answers too. Again, that was like, he still would have been left wondering, like, why isn't she doing this? Why isn't she meeting these milestones? Why is this so much work? And why is it so difficult?
I have a specific memory I forgot to mention too.
Oh.
So when we were in the NICU, or sorry, not when we were in the NICU, when we were in we had just been admitted, there was a couple with their child in the bed on, cause we were in a ward room. So there's two kids per room. And, the lady comes around and hands me a holy card.
Oh, yeah.
And it was, again,
it's in my wallet.
It was called the Inexhaustible Cup.
Yes.
Which was an icon of Our Lady and the child Jesus in a chalice.
Yeah. Well, hello.
Hello again, sweet child Jesus.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he just kept showing up. But so we went through that crazy time. The surgery was generally successful. Few little issues along the way, but all in all, it hasn't been terrible. Not like it was, but we came home and then we had to start finding normal again.
Yeah. I mean, it was still really, really tough. Cause I mean, she spent the whole like surgical healing time, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, it was rough. It was still kind of rough. Just, I mean, she was still retching, not quite throwing up, but retching a lot. And I mean, like post-surgery, there's the pain and like the nausea and like it's like her stomach was, I mean, it's a muscle, and any muscle learning to basically do a new thing. It's like her stomach had to completely learn how to do what it's supposed to do, where it's supposed to do it, because it just hadn't for months. Yeah.
So like they went back in and just put the stomach back into place and
slowly, carefully. And I mean, so for it to learn to expand and get, stretch and get smaller like a stomach should typically. I mean, you got all the swelling. It was still rough for a while.
Yeah.
We have then since been back in hospital again, figured out some other things, like the other tweaks. We figured out her pump was overfeeding her. And really, once we got that, I think mostly in order, I mean, she's really been doing pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah. She's growing still slowly.
Yep.
But I mean, we were even commenting on this earlier today. Like, it feels like she's had a growth spurt. She's still really small.
She is very small. Like she's 10 months now, 8 adjusted, but she's like just over 12 pounds.
Yeah.
I think she's going to move out of 3 to 6 month sizes now.
Yeah.
But she was in like newborn and 0 to 3 for a long time.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
She's very skinny, but she's got length.
Yeah, she's still the littlest flower.
She really
is. It's funny. We've gone out to dinner we actually went out to dinner with Matt. This was, I don't know, a couple months ago. Matt from season 1.
On his birthday.
Yeah, Therese is a great party trick because like you can take her anywhere and people are like, oh, how old is she?
She's so cute. How old?
Yeah, and you're like, why don't you take a guess? And they're like, the lady was like, 10 days old.
Like, oh,
oof.
2 months? No. Yeah.
Wrong again,
friend,
lady.
Like, her head, like, look at this head control. The head control is way too good.
Yeah, for a 10-day-old.
Yeah, or even a 2-month-old.
Yeah,
like,
big time.
Like, oh no.
Yeah, so pretty wild, but yeah, no. So it's just been a matter of like finding our new normal now.
Yeah,
and
feel like we can go out places.
Yeah,
go out and like she's not going to throw up, or like you need like a buffer between like, oh well, she just finished her feed. We can't move her.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, I mean, she's feeding every 3 hours, which is like having a perpetual newborn.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I don't know. Like God has been here in the midst of it. And I kind of feel like I was kind of thinking about it. Like we were talking about like, what is really like the purpose of this podcast about? And
he spent a lot of time. I mean, anyway, not a lot of time, but enough time talking about that.
Like, yeah. What is it that we're trying to communicate with this? And, I kind of feel like, this podcast is like music, and like Therese's story and our stories are, at least on this side of the grave, sometimes more like music than like a storybook, because I don't really feel like it resolves the story. The story is still evolving. Like Therese is still a mystery. She still has issues. We don't really know what this Champ 1 situation is going to bring.
Yeah.
We don't
no
really
know.
idea. She's still facing certain complications throughout. And it's, for us as parents, it's just a matter of like, we've kind of come to realize that our role in her life is everyone is given a cross. Everyone.
Yeah.
Including your newborn baby. And our role as parents is to help them to carry their crosses. But the hardest part is not being able to carry it for them.
Yeah.
It's not being able to just be like, babe, let me take this from you. Going through that process with Therese in NICU was a via dolorosa. It was a way of sorrows. And it gave new insight into what it was like, even just in a very finite way, because obviously we are fallen, we are sinful human beings who are prone to distrust and to doubt and fear and sadness. But it gave insight into what Our Lady suffered, watching as her son comes down the road carrying that heavy cross, covered in his own blood. The blood that, like, she herself provided for his little body.
Mm-hmm.
God gave us the opportunity, and still gives us the opportunity as parents, to suffer with our kids. Some kids get to have a normal life, or a seemingly normal life. I mean, Father Stan has this song, right, that says everybody's got to suffer. And I know that to be true, but I mean, for us, I don't know what that, I look at other families and it's so hard not to compare and go, you guys have it easy.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're taking your kid to soccer this evening, like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm actually running back to the hospital tonight. Like, it's just been this ongoing stress. There's been so many things that we've wanted to, or I've wanted to be able to invest in, to spend time on things like the podcast, but other things too, like other events and things. And you realize, you know, our primary vocation is obviously to one another, but it's to serve and to help our children to carry their own crosses and to learn to carry them well.
Yeah.
And that's such a hard thing. Like, we have to be able to show our children how to suffer too, and how to suffer well. And I mean, I'm grateful for this opportunity because it's taught me so much, and it's obviously impossible to share all of this in a single podcast.
Yeah.
Or in 2 podcasts, because this definitely is going to end up in 2 podcasts. But, you know, God has obviously taught us a lot of things in the midst of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, honestly, like, I mean, since John, but I mean, especially since like this whole experience with Therese, I feel like the amount of growth that's happened kind of, at least in the little ways that God's been teaching me, you know, about the faith, about his church, about who he is, you know, about his faithfulness, about myself, you know, the things that I need to work on and grow in, and my sinfulness, my weakness, my absolute need for him. Like, I feel like there's just never been so much growth that's happened in such a short amount of time. You know, I feel like it is kind of cliche. At least it feels kind of cliche, you know, say like, oh, it's been hard, but it's been worth it. But it's true. Like, it has been so difficult, you know, personally, you know, in our marriage, with John, with Therese, with each other, with, you know, all the other stuff of life, jobs, friendship, like, it affects everything, you know, but it has absolutely been worth it. You know, I think really anything that helps me become closer to God, because in this life we, you know, the whole point is union with God, and where we do really find that is in suffering. And I've found that more than ever, especially these past 10 months, you know, or since we found out that she was coming. But I mean, it sucks.
Yeah.
Big time.
Crosses are tough.
It does, you know, and I think there's no shying away from that. But, you know, it's been, yeah, so hard, but so rewarding. And I mean, I think it's even like, you know, taught me to be even more attentive as much as I can be to other people. And I mean, even if like sometimes what I feel can be small, but it's really not, like prayer, big time prayer for people, you know, prayer is a very, very powerful thing. And I mean, even doing whatever we can practically for each other to help each other, you know, it's our responsibilities to carry our, what do they say? Like to carry our load, but we need to help each other carry our burdens. Is it that, or am I mixing that up? I feel like I'm butchering this right now. Just, yeah. But
it's okay. It's after midnight.
I know it is after midnight, but yeah, I know it's just been a big time of growth. Big time of growth. And it's not ending.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to end just with a little thought from Saint Therese of Lisieux on suffering, because, you know, we can say suffering sucks, but Therese, our dear Saint Therese,
yeah,
didn't look at it that way. She said, quote, "I can truly say that suffering opened her arms to me from the first, and I took her to my heart." And again, she says, and this is, you know, a veiled reference to her Carmelite vocation, but she says, "When the way of perfection was opened out before me, I realized that in order to become a saint, one must suffer much, always seek the most perfect path, and forget oneself. I also understood that there are many degrees of holiness, that each soul is free to respond to the calls of our Lord to do much or little for his love. In a word, to choose among the sacrifices he asks. And then I cried out, "My God, I choose everything. I will not be a saint by halves. I am not afraid of suffering for thee. I fear only one thing, and that is to do my own will. Accept the offering of my will, for I choose all that thou willest." So we hope that if you are going through your own suffering right now, we hope that this encourages you to keep going, to offer it for souls, to offer it for the good of the church, for the good of your children, if you have them, if you don't have them.
And your spouse.
And your spouse. But no, you're not alone. And coming back to those who showed up kind of in that second half in particular, to really help us. You have no idea how much that impact or how much that has an impact on those who are suffering, because again, it is quite isolating. So if you are in a time, in a season in your life where things are good, look for ways, and even if you're not, look for ways where you can help others who are suffering. Because it's really in those ways that you can kind of participate in the cross too. You become that Simon of Cyrene for someone. And I think that's a particular important thing, right? When you think about the Beatitudes, right? The blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. We have that call and that responsibility to mourn with those who mourn and weep with those who weep. And to help. My grandfather, I've probably mentioned this on the podcast, would always say, when one hand hurts, the other comes and helps. And I think it's really important, especially for us as Roman Catholics, especially for us who are in the traditional movement. It's in those works of charity that the greatest witness is found, and the world will know us by the fruits that we bear. And, if we become insular and don't look for ways to serve others, what does that say about us? What does that say about the church? What does that say about the actual effect of what is happening in our beautiful liturgies that we have, and the sacraments we receive and the formation we receive? What does that say to the world? What does that even say to the church right now? They need to see our love.
Yeah. And we're called to assist. Like in Mass, we are supposed to assist in that sacrifice and that suffering. We need to do the same with each other.
Yes. Right? Like St. John.
Can't take it for them, but
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, like St. John Chrysostom says, right? If you can't find Christ in the beggar at the door, how will you find him in the chalice? Yeah. And I think that's really the case. So, again, we hope this was of some value to you. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But this was a great chance for Julie and I to sit down, because we don't generally, and we haven't had the chance to even podcast together, have her on the show really.
In a long time.
Yeah. And maybe we'll have you back again. I don't know. Right now, like we said, she's still really busy, and I'm still really busy with babies and jobs and all of that. But
Sometimes with the kid and the podcast interruptions, and
Yeah.
it just doesn't work
We've
out
literally
so well.
had to stop the podcast multiple times.
Oh
because
yeah,
of
we've been
Therese. So far. Like, you're not hearing this in, because of post-production, but
yeah, a lot of breaks.
there's been a lot of breaks. Thus why we're recording at 12:30 at night right now.
Oh, is it 12:30 now? Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess, just to come back to our sweet infant Jesus, even he was born right into suffering, So, remember him. Remember him and ask for his help, because he will help you. I think we'll try to include in the show notes some links to some prayers and some miracles and such that he's, like the infant of Prague, is really known for.
Yeah. Which is also a Carmelite devotion.
Yeah. It all comes back to Carmel. But seriously, yeah. Go to the infant Jesus.
Yeah.
Go to him. He will help you.
And as always, stay
Ready.